If you've listened to our recent podcast, you have heard that the Hills and our team are going through this really intense season of walking with their daughter-in-law, Meg, through stage 4 cancer. And so we have really been doing the wheel together a lot and have realized, even in these very, very dark and deep scenarios, that joy and pain can live side by side. I remember growing up and thinking you're either one or the other. And now in adulthood, and by doing the core emotion wheel often, I can see how all of these emotions are interchangeable and that they can live together. So we're going to be talking about that today, of how joy and pain live together, and we need both on a daily basis. And so welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. This is the podcast where we break open the emotions that take us from being disconnected to connected in our relationships and in ourselves. I am your host, Tera Wages, and joining me is marriage and family therapist, clinical sexologist, Dr. Glenn Hill, and his incredible wife, Phyllis Hill. And together, they have founded the Connection Codes, which is the guide to human connection. And we're so glad you're here.
Absolutely. Hello, world.
Hi, friends. So I would say through this season, the most powerful tool in all of this has been the core emotion wheel, which it's just amazing to us how there's times when you are so flooded that and numb, and that what you're walking through is so difficult that you don't, when someone says, like, how are you? Or, what's happening for you? It's like it's like you don't even know how to answer that. You don't know how to find yourself. Yeah. And so the wheel has been such a beautiful tool, even with our son and his children and our daughter-in-law, to just be able to really hear their heart, but also to just get them to release so much of this that they're walking through. Yeah. And we want to start this episode, and maybe from now on, with the wheel. Start with the wheel. We end with the wheel usually, but man, the wheel kind of tunes you into how we're doing. It tunes us into how each of us right here sitting at this table are doing. So we're going to start this week off with the wheel.
I love that.
And we're going to all do it.
Yes.
Because we're all going through a whole lot right now. So who wants to go first?
Oh, you're looking at me and smiling. I can go first. I don't mind.
You sure?
I never mind going first. Okay. This is just going to be whatever's firing in my body in this moment. Ooh, okay. What's firing for me is, in this moment, based on what you just said, I have anger that more people haven't had these tools earlier, because I have lost people I care about to suicide, who can't see that all of these emotions will change. When you realize that you can experience them all in one day and you can identify them, it gives you hope for the future, that this pain is eventually going to end. Wow. So I have anger that y'all just didn't do this faster.
Yeah, I get that.
For those.
Wow.
I have shame. I have shame in how I haven't even shared with people that I love about this tool. Granted, I come on here and I share every single week, but I don't initiate this wheel with other people more often. There have been several times with someone that I'm tempted to be like, hey, do you want to do this with me? And I have shame that I didn't. I have guilt when I feel joy and people that I love are in pain. And so I struggle with guilt sometimes of like, I'm experiencing this really good thing and people I care about are hurting. I have fear. I have fear for the unknown over the next several months in summer, walking with Meg and Sky and loving them so deeply, just the unknown of what's going to happen and how long this healing process is going to take.
Wow.
Loneliness. I have processed this loneliness on the podcast before, but in being a good friend to Meg, but also being the outsider of the group. So just loneliness in that role. Sad watching someone that I love so deeply get their life get flipped upside down in an instant. I'm just sad about that. Hurt hurt for people that are currently in such a dark place that can't identify the joy because they've lost touch with it, because they don't have the tools to recognize it. And joy in our team, joy in the sun being out, and just a lot of hope in looking forward. Even in the fear of the unknown, just a lot of joy in knowing what can come.
Wow. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah.
So I think for me, I feel guilt and fear kind of combined for me today of planning out our summer. I think in this season, I've realized that Glenn and I have to get away some. We're carrying a lot, showing up in this space, every day for our son and daughter-in-law and the kids and our whole family, because they're all hurting so much. But yet I know that we need to get away a little bit every month. So I do feel some guilt and fear about that, because the fear is that what if something happens while we're gone? And then just the guilt, it just feels selfish to me to have that need,
Gracious.
My lonely is that it is a lonely road, as in the amount of pain that we are feeling, the amount of tears that we shed feels at times just alone, which is understandable. I mean, it's our precious girl, right, that's going through this. So sad, huge amounts of sad. I mean, just just seeing her body, and just, and seeing, people often ask, how is she? And it's like her spirit is high, but her body is weak. And there's a lot of sad in that. Hurt, definitely it feels like a physical hurt, just, the hurt of seeing someone else hurting so much, and seeing, the hurting just in our son, and just his, like he'll say, "Mama, I'm so scared. I'm so scared of what's coming," and just, there's just a lot of that feels physically heavy. There's a lot of hurt. Anger, I think my anger, is that's a hard one to share, because I feel it. Oh man, I feel it towards my mother-in-law, who seems really oblivious to what is happening, and just there's times that it's like she's still just very much consumed with herself and not even aware of how much. And it's not that she doesn't bring it up. She does. She'll ask, like, "How's Megan doing?" But it's like there's still a huge disconnect there for me. So I experience anger in that, because I do need to also take care of her and her needs, and that's a big one. Joy, there are such huge moments of joy. And I'm so thankful for those. Just, I know yesterday I just sat in the sun. Like I went outside, sat on the stoop, the front, part of our front door area. Just the sun was right there. I was just sat and soaked it up. Joy. I went for a walk out in we have some beautiful pastures, and just joy moments. There's really some pretty big joy moments. And I'm just so thankful. I'm thankful for the sunshine. I'm thankful for just, there's so much love being expressed to our family right now. And there's moments of joy, and they're really high peaks of joy, for sure.
Yeah. Wow. For me, a lot of anger, we were talking this morning, just how simple and how smooth things can go if we're authentic. Tera, you shared about your parents, just a miss where it's so freaking simple. If they'd slowed down for literally 4 seconds, it's just amazing. And instead, they completely missed each other. And this is true for all of us. And just how simple. I came up with a semi-brilliant saying, a few weeks ago that life is simple. Humans are freaking complex. And it's amazing how literally ignorant, how uneducated, how uninformed we are about how to do this thing. And I'm like, how's that possible? Life is simple if we just convey authentically, which is what we're born doing. So it's like, wow, we get knocked off that much in a very short period of time. A lot of shame for me that, gracious, I'm 62. It took me forever. I always say I was a slow kid in the group to have a clue, and just so much guilt, how much I missed you. And of course, how much I missed myself. I didn't know. I wasn't doing it on purpose. It wasn't my plan to wreck our relationship. I just didn't know. So much fear in how we convey to people, because we're certainly holding people's hands, but we're holding often their life. They're counting on us.
Yeah.
They're putting their family, their marriage, their relationship, their whatever in our hands. And it's like, are we up to the task? And I think we're good at what we do, but if we miss with people, it doesn't just affect us, it affects other people as well. And there's loneliness in that at times, just that we have a huge task in front of us. We always say our population goal is 8 billion people. That's a lot. I haven't even counted that high. And it's a lot of people. And I know there's lots of other things happening out there too, but I think that we have found the tools that everybody on the planet desperately needs. Sadness in that, just even going back to my childhood and, through my teen years and early adulthood, it's like, good grief, how did we miss so badly?
Wow.
We're brilliant people and dumb as bricks. We just missed. Hurt through this whole season, just people being tuned in. You mentioned, my mom, which drives me nuts. She's a remarkable human being in so many ways, and also just fairly clueless in so many others. And, she didn't know. She was never taught. She's 96, and I don't think there's going to be any big shifts anytime soon. So it simply is the way it is. There has been a remarkable amount of joy in this journey, this season, with Sky and Meg. So many people have just come forward, and, it's still awful as far as the situation goes, but it's kind of what we're talking about today, just that there can be so much joy in the midst of the pain, the sadness, the sorrow, and just getting to be with people. My dream is that we live this way all the time.
Right, right.
Continuously connected and in teamship with each other.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you both for sharing. I think that is one of I feel like every week I'm like, well, this is my favorite thing about the core emotion wheel, or this is my favorite thing. But one of my favorite things about it is that it does help us identify that we do feel all of these emotions every day. And when we can't identify the joy, and we're in such deep pain, I can see how it feels like this is never going to end and I'm going to be stuck here. If you can't do this work to realize these moments come and they go and they come and they go, and they are ever changing. And I remind my kids this all the time of like, oh, the hurt doesn't last. It doesn't stay here forever. And I think about people that whenever you are in those seasons and you feel that huge hurt, when you can't identify the joy parts that can come, how that it just makes it even darker for you.
It is interesting. And I would say since, in the past 4 years, for sure, I would have to see how long ago. No, it's been longer than that. But this is what we're walking through right now is the most extreme amount of pain for a very, very long time. And so for a very long time. And it is affecting like our family, not just Sky and Meg and their children, but it's like our other children and our other grandchildren. Like we all live close together. We're a very close family. And so there's there is this really cloud of sad and heavy and I think just fear of what's coming, or there's definitely moments of all of it. And I think about that. It seems like our bodies want to just shut down and be numb, and that is the most dangerous place to allow yourself to stay. And I know even with so many conversations, and I do want to talk about this. And I know, just for our listeners, our son and daughter-in-law are wanting their story to be told. So they have given us permission to share their story. They would like to join us on a podcast and share their own part of it. That's a little tricky. We're trusting Wes and Tera to kind of really navigate that well. It's hard because of finding Meg in a good day, like it's all a little tricky right now. But so I just want you to know what we talk about, they know we're talking about it. And when our son came over a few days ago, and he reached out and he said, "Mom, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm here." And I cleared my schedule really quick, because he just needed to come and he needed to cry and he needed me to listen. And as I was sitting there listening, and, his cry right now, it's very hard to watch because it's his whole body just shakes. And as a mama, that's really hard to watch. And I just want to hold him. He's a man, right? He's big. And, his body is reacting in such a huge way that it's not like holding a little baby. You can't really hold. You can touch him. But when he is in that space, it's like all I can do is put my hand on him, his leg or his arm, and let him know I'm here. But to listen and not have, I know, thanks to the connection codes, this is a sacred space, and I'm just here to listen. I can't fix it. I can't talk him out of it. I can't tell him everything's going to be okay. I need to listen. And so I have to sit there and I practice the audible listening. So he knows I'm listening. He knows I hear him. But I also, through those moments, those minutes that pass by, I am praying for wisdom. I am praying for the right words. And so after he just was pouring and gushing all the things, I reminded him when the time was right. I reminded him of what the doctor had said. So the day that Meg had chemo, I went with them and I sat and I heard what the doctor told them. And I was so thankful that I was there, because I know that, and others have told me this, like, Sky can't remember these things. I don't even know that he can hear them when he's being told these things.
His brain is flooded with emotion.
Yes. So someone else being there is very helpful. So I was the one that was there. And the doctor pretty much laid out like what the next few days would look like. So after Sky was sharing all this with me, I just reminded him of what Meg had just gone through the week before. Like, I was like, buddy, she's had 2 surgeries and she had chemo. So because what he was witnessing was her decline so fast, like, as in she can barely keep her eyes open, Mom. She has no energy. Like, in his mind, I'm watching her, like, this is the end. Today must be the end, because she is so weak. She can barely get up. She's just, I can't hold her because just me touching her hurts. So I can't even touch her. Then I just simply said, the reminder, like what she's just been through. And in the moment, you don't know if that information helps or not. You just really don't. And what preceded pretty shortly after that is that we got a call from the school, and their son was not doing well. He was having a panic attack at school, and the school just said, "Can you please come and get him?" And Sky just looked at me, and I could just tell by that look that it just was so much for him to think of, can I hold space for myself and for him? And so I just said, do you want me to go get him? And he said, oh, Mom, would you? That would be amazing. And so I had a core emotion wheel right there, emoji wheel on our coffee table. And I just grabbed it because I was like, all right, I felt like I was given a really sacred task to go get my grandson when he was having a panic attack at school. So I went, and he's a big guy. My grandson, he is, over 6 feet tall, and he's a football player. He's just a big guy. And when I got him, he was just real quiet. And when we got in the car, I just thought, okay, how do I do this? How do I get him talking? How do I get him to release what is so pent up inside of him? And, I've not done this before, not like this, not with a grandchild whose parent is fighting for their life. Like, I've not done this. And so I'm like, all I know to do that makes any sense to me is the core emotion wheel.
Yeah.
And I've also learned you got to go first. You just got to go first. Yeah. And so first I asked him, what's happening, buddy? And he just talked logistics about the day and what got him to that place of thinking, I can't breathe. And, but it had nothing to do with his mom. But I knew that what's under it all is what's happening with your mom.
Yeah.
And so then I said, well, buddy, can we do the wheel? And, it's a sweet part of our family because our kids love the core emotion wheel. They know it very well. And so I knew that no was not going to be the answer. Even if he wanted to say no, I knew he wasn't going to say no. He said, sure. And then I went first, and I didn't just talk about his mom. I mean, I really was just genuinely with what was happening with me that day. And so I went around, and then I said, can you do it, buddy? And it was so incredible to me because as he began, it was almost like a door opened and the floodgates came out. And it was so beautiful to see these big crocodile tears start flowing out of him. And I could see, because his head was bent and they were falling on his knees or his lap, And it was just such a beautiful moment it was a sacred space to hear. And what came out of him was not what I expected. Like, he's been carrying such a huge burden in all this, and like feeling guilt. Like, my mom is so good and she shouldn't be going through this. I should be going through this. And just, you think about that, for a child to be carrying that, it's like, yeah, that's got to come out. That's got to come out. And, just going around, and even him sharing his loneliness, like, I don't want to burden my mom and dad right now. And so I, of course, had as lots of tears coming through my body as well. Like, my tears were flowing pretty freely just hearing his precious heart. But it was like I could see his body language shift. I could see that through all of this process, he was feeling lighter. And, I just oohed him. And I was very audible because I wanted to make sure he could hear me through his tears and his sobs. And then afterwards, it was just such a sweet time because I just said, hey, you hungry? You want to go get some lunch? And he's always hungry. So he was like, yeah. And then after we grabbed some Chick-fil-A, I knew we didn't go in the restaurant. We went through the drive-thru, but I could just tell it's not time to go back home yet. And we just drove around the countryside and just talked. And it was lighthearted. Like, there was joy in those moments there, so it was, which is part of our topic today. Like, you can experience intense emotion, and then as far as the pain, right? All of the pain of that. And then the joy is such a high peak of joys right now. But I think if you just stay numb, if you keep it all inside and you just keep pushing it down, then you're not able to experience those high joy moments either. Like it's like you're just stuck in the numb, right? You're just stuck in I am not feeling anything. And I think that's such a good reminder of what that looks like and how to get there, like how to be able to let yourself experience the extreme pain so that you can also experience the extreme joy.
Right. That's what I was thinking as you were sharing that last part of it, is that if he could not have processed all that he had just processed through the core emotion wheel, then that after y'all going to Chick-fil-A, you driving in the countryside, all of that would have still been buried deep in his body, increasing the amount of loneliness that he's experiencing. And so then after the two of you were able to experience these like snippets of joy together because he had just processed everything else.
Yeah, and the parallel to that, we now know the brain doesn't distinguish physical and emotional pain. So if somebody steps on a nail, they have a nail in their foot. You think about what percentage of the body, or even a splinter under your fingernail, what percentage of your body is that? That's 0%, basically 0 point something. But your whole being is focused on that. You can't, and I can't say, babe, let's go grab some lunch. And she's like, well, I just stepped on a nail. I have a nail in my foot. I'm like, okay, well, but let's go have some lunch. That doesn't make sense. You can't, we get that with the physical. We're like, oh, well, that's obvious. Well, the same is true with emotional. And if we went to lunch, and I'm like, babe, this is our favorite spot. Awesome. It's amazing. No, all she's aware of, all she's experiencing is the pain in her foot. And I'm like, why are you focusing on that? That's 0% of your body. And okay, I get it, but you don't have a nail in your other foot. And you don't have a nail in your arm. So why not just celebrate? And we do that to people all the time. We faith-based people are horrible at it, where we're just like, well, just choose joy, ignore all that stuff, give it to God or whatever. And I get it. I can discuss all that, but it doesn't work. Sorry. Welcome to humanity. Welcome to planet Earth. If you don't process through what's happening for you, all of it, then you get stuck in that.
Well, just to clarify, I think you can pull God into it.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is a beautiful thing. Yeah. But it is interesting it's actually, I think, much worse to try and choose joy.
Yep. Okay, I have a story about this.
Okay.
Yes. Literally, what you were sharing about the nail in your foot situation, in college, I loved Wes Wages, and he couldn't know that I loved him because I had to play it cool.
Right.
And so the day before school started back, we went swimming in the middle of the night in the river and jumped off the pier into the mucky river at 2 a.m. Wow. And it was a group of us, and then got in the bed of the truck and drove to the 24-hour diner after this. And I was just chasing this joy of like this man, and he liked me too at that time. And I was flooded with joy. Well, when I jumped into that river, I literally cut my foot open on the bottom of the river, and I ignored the pain.
Wow.
I ignored the pain because I wanted to only feel the joy of being with him. Did not bandage it, did not look at it, did nothing with the pain in my foot. Wow. Well, the next day, first day of school, I literally could not walk on my foot. My foot was swollen. It was infected. It was red.
Wow.
And I ignored it all day because I needed to go to work. And I went to work, and my boss looked at me and she said, you've got to go. You've got to go to the doctor. Like your foot is cut open. What are you doing? And I went to the doctor, and they had to dig mud out of my foot. I mean, it was brutal. I had to get shots. Ended up being such a bigger ordeal because I only wanted to feel the joy, and I completely ignored the pain in the bottom of my foot. Yeah. And so we can't ignore the pain,
right?
Or the pain will infect us.
Wow.
It will make us worse.
Yeah.
But we also need to feel the joy so we don't get sucked into only the darkness of the pain. Yeah. And that is the beauty of what we teach.
Right.
Yeah.
All of these things work together for our health, for our benefit, both mentally, emotionally, and physically. It's a full body experience.
Yeah.
So I love that example that you gave because I'm like, whew, I've literally been there.
You can relate to that specifically.
Okay, I have to point this out. It's not exactly on topic, but it's just so powerful. Sitting with our son a couple of days ago, and he had wept several times, and I'd held him, and I was sitting right beside him and touching him. And at one point he folded his arms and he was just rocking. And he said, "Dad, I think I'm developing autism and Tourette's." And I just dooed him. I said, "Oh, okay, what's happening with that?" And he said, "I just find myself, rocking. I find myself just I'm so overwhelmed." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I get that. There's energy in your body, and it's got to go somewhere." And so, and then he said, "I just have these outbursts, of he's just so overwhelmed." Well, yeah, that's what ends up looking like Tourette's with whoever is dealing with that. And again, the side note that if we could recognize disorders of the psyche that way, and some of those become habit forming and it just becomes the automatic, and I get that, but that's all that's happening is the psyche is disordered because the nervous system is so dysregulated. And if we keep going back, we find the core emotions, we can process them, and it changes the whole setup. I just thought that was so cute that he was diagnosing himself and he was so concerned, but it only makes sense. Yeah, this energy is built up in your body. It's got to go somewhere. And the way it ends up looking is, oh, okay, this kid is, I call him a kid. He's, how old is he? 37. But, he's with his arms folded and he's rocking. Yeah, that's what his body is needing to process so much of this energy.
Well, and it is such a, there is like a mindset of, I need to be strong for everyone. I need to be strong for everyone. And yet the body needs so desperately to get all of this emotion processed. And we use that word, and often people go, well, what in the world does that word mean? That's a big word, processed. And it's getting it out. It's like the cleansing of getting it said, to acknowledging it. And I know a minute ago when I was doing the wheel, and I mentioned anger, and I hesitate because, I know there's a lot of people listening to our podcast and we're talking about really personal things. And I think, I could just ignore that. But that, I know it's so damaging, but I do feel shame in it. And I actually skipped shame. I didn't realize that until you were doing your wheel. Wow. I do feel shame that I have anger in this time of caring for your mom, I do feel shame about that. And I've, she's been living in our home for 11 years and I've done really well. And right now I feel so much of just being at capacity, just being maxed out in caring for people. And so when she's so unaware and her needs are pretty high. I mean, she stopped driving. She's 96. She's herself on hospice. She is, her life is kind of challenging, and it's though. So yes, there is a lot, but I can't store it. I can't keep that in my body. I know how unhealthy that is. And I was with my grandson. I talked about that. He can't. Buddy, I just kept saying, buddy, you got to let this stuff out. You can't store this. Your body is not meant to store this. And I was saying the part of the reason why you had a panic attack today is because you've been trying to store this. And the stuff that was happening at school just kind of sent you over the edge and you couldn't control. And it started coming down on you. He just was panicking because he was having a hard time breathing. But really, it was the idea that you cannot. Our bodies were not meant to store this kind of pain, this kind of sad, this kind of lonely, the guilt that he's experiencing. And the rest of the story is when we finally did come back to our house, our son was still there and he was sitting up at the back of our property and up on the hill, and he called to us, and our grandson ran inside to put down his book bag or whatever. And when he came back out, I said, "Hey babe, your dad's up the hill. Why don't we go join him?" And I said, "Grab the core emotion wheel." So he grabbed the core emotion wheel, and I said to him as we were walking up the hill, I said, "Can you do this with your dad?" And he goes, "I don't know." And I said, "Oh, I get that. I get that. I know it's a little scary. And, but man, it'd be really good. It'd be really good." And so after sitting up there, the three of us for a few minutes, I said, "Hey, let's do the wheel." And so then I put it on the ground in front of us, and our grandson went first. and shared the same wheel that he had shared with me. And then his tears are flowing, but man, our son sitting next to me, I was in between the two of them. His whole body just started shaking, and his tears and his sobs were huge, hearing his son process what his son was experiencing. And then after our grandson was done, our son said, "Mom, can you go next?" He goes, "You're really good at this." So I did mine, and I did it real quick, real fast on purpose. And then I said, "Sky, can you go?" And he was quiet for a very long 60 seconds. And then he began, but he had so much, there were so many tears and sobs. But he said just such precious things. And he just said to his son, he said, "We can't hold this in any longer. Yep. We got to let this out." And they own acreage there on a lot of land. And he said, "We got to run up. We got to go up into the woods. And if we need to scream and we need to cry." And I was so thankful to be in that moment, that very special sacred space, because it's so true. You think you're being strong, or you have to be, there's this, I think we think strength is not showing emotion, and it's not true.
Yeah.
And it's not good for our bodies. And it's like this precious grandson of mine has thought, "Oh, well, Dad's being strong, so I need to be strong. We can't cry in front of Mom." But then it's like everybody's trying to hold it together, but your body can't hold that much together. And, I know we're trying to kind of talk about how you can have that joy with that pain. And I'm experiencing that, like, peaks of joy that are so rich and so high. And I'm like, wow, this is, to me, it's almost like this gift, the gift of when you hurt deeply, you can also then have the joy deep, like the big peaks. And our daughter-in-law posted something on Instagram, and neither of us can remember exactly what it was, but she called it a God wink, like a wink from God. And I loved that. And I think, yes, there's all day long, I see the little winks. I see God showing up in these spaces. But I think that if you're numb, you're not able to see those.
Right.
And you're just kind of almost like you're drowning. You can barely stay above water, and you're taking in way too much water. And so you're just focused on the next breath. But if we can use this tool and actually really consistently process our emotion and get it out of our bodies, then it's like the sunshine, the sun rays come in such big ways. And we can see just all the little things, all the ways that God is showing up in this space.
Yeah.
And the joy moments are so high. And I'm so thankful for those joy moments right now.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that she calls it a God wink. I think that acknowledging that, exactly what you said, if you are numb to it, you can't see those moments of joy. No. And I also want to acknowledge, because I don't know that this fires for everyone, but I do think that there are a lot of people that when they have someone that they care about deeply that's in pain, if they feel joy, they feel guilt about the joy. I have a very good friend who is Palestinian, and her family has been killed in both Gaza and the West Bank just in the last several months. And she has so much guilt over any joyful moment. She's had a hard time eating. She didn't want to celebrate Christmas. Like, the guilt over joy has been a massive weight. And so I know that that is true for so many. And I've had little moments of that, not to any extent of what Sky and Meg's kids could be experiencing when they have joy, but they see their mom in such pain. And so I can see how that would fire. And so I encourage you, to process the whole wheel.
Yes.
When you feel joy and you're like, oh, I have guilt for feeling the joy, like process that guilt as well so you can continue to feel the joy. Don't let the joy get buried by the guilt because again, what we mentioned earlier, this affects your entire body. I am watching people I love. The guilt is causing sickness in them because they don't want themselves to feel any joy. And so I encourage you to use every single one of these emotions when you're in those painful bits. But more than that, when you're not in the pain, use it now. If your grandson had not previously been aware of the core emotion, like he's had practice. He knew exactly what you were talking about in that moment. There didn't need to be a training session. There didn't need to be anything. He just needed you to be vulnerable first. That's all he needed. But it was because he'd had that practice. It's because Sky has had the practice. He knows how to identify what shame feels like because he's done it before. He's not numb to those emotions. So when you're in the healthy state, do it now. Do the work now. That way, when you're in the flood of it, you can process it smoothly, quickly, because those moments will come. And that's what life can be. We complicate things. Like you said, the human experience is complicated. And if you're not prepared for those moments, that is when that wave is just going to pull you so far under. And it's just darkness. And so having people in your life that you can share this with, that you can process with, where you can feel the joy, you can identify it when you're in that. And like the example I gave earlier, so you can process and take care of that pain. You can clean that wound so you don't get infected. And that is the entire mission of the connection codes. So if you don't already have access to a core emotion wheel, you can go to our website and download it, connectioncodes.co/podcast. There will be a link in the show notes. So you can do this with yourself. I encourage people, if this is your very first time ever doing it, do it with yourself a couple of times and then find a safe person, whether it's your partner, your child, your parent, but have someone else that you can share with and say, hey, this is a tool that I just discovered. And it is really helping me process what I'm experiencing daily. I would have a lot of joy if you would do it with me. And like the example Phyllis gave, you go first. And when you go first and you share vulnerably, it opens up the process for someone else. Glenn, the very opening line of the Connection Codes book, you have to be vulnerable to get to safety, but you need safety to get to vulnerability. So that's why I recommend finding a safe person and then share vulnerably. And then you're going to create the most beautiful cycle between the two of you of vulnerability and safety.
Wow. Cool.
And so we are so grateful for y'all to be here, to walk in every stage of our journey with us. If you've been listening for the last 2 years and now you've heard from Meg and Sky, they've been on our podcast before, and you care about what we're doing here. Just thank you so much for your love, for your support, for your emails over the last couple of weeks, just sharing your own experiences with us, sending good prayers or energy towards the Hill family. Meg and Sky are the names of Dr. Glenn and Phyllis's kids that are walking so deeply in this right now. So if you want to lift them up and send them all the positive energy and prayers, that would be amazing. We do all of this because
you need this.
You deserve this. So let's do this.
Let's do this.